Hi, welcome to our course on Exploratory Data Analysis with Excel. In this class, we are going to study data storytelling and dashboard design.
This class is going to present to us how to build a story around our dataset and then how we can design a dashboard to tell this story. We are going to work with our Superstore Sales dataset, whose link is available down below here in the description of this video. Well, let's have a look at this dataset. There are a few variables that will not be necessary in our analysis, so I'm going to remove them just to make the visualization clearer for us. The first variable or the first column I'm going to remove is the column row ID. So I'm going to delete this column. I'm also going to delete customer ID, customer name. We will not need these variables in our analysis. And also the country and the product ID. The country is because all instances here are about the United States, so there is no point in keeping this variable. And the product ID, as we have the product category, subcategory, and name, so I can remove the product ID from this table as well. Okay, so here we have the order ID, order date, war room. Let's center these two columns. Shipment mode, segment. Okay, let's organize a little bit our data. The city, the state, the postal code, the region, the category, subcategory, product name, and then we have the sales, and these are the sales in terms of value. Okay, so the first thing that we have to do, I already created here a sheet on data storytelling. So the first thing that we will do is we will choose what information we will want to include in our dashboard. And the first information that I am going to include in the form of a KPI, a key performance indicator, is the total sales value. So I'm going to write in here total sales value. This is going to be a KPI. And then a few questions that we can ask about this data. Let's first have a look at the variables that we have. We have the order ID, the order date, the shipment date, the shipment mode, segment, city, state, postal code, region, category of the product, the subcategory, the product name, and the sales. Let's have a look at the possible values that we can have here for our variables. For example, the shipment mode, we can have 4 different types of shipment mode. First class, same day, second class, standard class. In terms of segment, it can be consumer, corporate, home office. Then we have the cities, the states, region. Which categories do we have? We have 3: furniture, office supplies, technology. And then we have a bit more subcategories and the product names. Okay, so one of the information that we will want to gather here is what's the total sales value by month. So total sales value by month. We will also want to know volume of sales by month, the number of products sold by category. Let's work with the category and also subcategory. And finally, what's the volume of sales by state? That's also important information for us. Okay, and then we will explore the year, the shipment mode, and the segment. We will explore these 3 information. The year, it can be in terms of order date or shipment date. We are going to work with the order date, but we are going to explore them using slicers. I will explain to you what I mean with slicers a bit later on. But for now, what is important is that we have the questions that we are going to ask about our data. So let me just include here information about the slicers. So I'm going to work with the year, and this is going to be order date, also the shipment mode, and the segment. Right? So all this will be embedded in our dashboard. I created another sheet here specifically for the dashboard. I also created a banner. This is just a rectangle with some colors that I added. I generated these logos using an AI prompt. So I just prompted, give me a logo for a superstore sales dashboard, and it gave me some choices. I chose these two images here and I placed them. So here is where I am going to build my dashboard. We are going to plot some graphs related to the total sales value by month and the total volume of sales. I'm going to use here some line charts. And then the number of products by category, I'm going to use here a bar chart. So let's place it here, line chart, line chart. Here I'm going to use a bar chart. And volume of sales by state, I'm going to use a chloropleth map, right? These are the slicers. And this is simply going to be a KPI. To generate each one of these graphs here, including the KPI, we are going to use a pivot table, and we are going to create one sheet for each pivot table that we'll have here in our dashboard. So I come back here to my data, and I will have to first insert a table. So I will transform my data set into a table. And the reason why we are going to do that is because when I transform my data from a simple sheet or spreadsheet to a table, I allow the automatic update of my dashboard when I change the data here in my data sheet. Okay, so it's very important to transform your data in a table. So let's start now with our pivot tables. So let's take table range, is table 2, which is this table that is selected here, and let's go for a new worksheet. So we have a new worksheet. Let's move it here, and let's simply copy it by pressing Ctrl and moving it there. So we'll need one new sheet or one new pivot table for each of the information that we are going to add in our dashboard. And I will rename them here. So here I'll have the KPI, and then I'll have here the sales by month, sales by month, and this is in value. Here I have sales, volume of sales, volume of sales, and then here we have products by category, products by category, and then sales by state, which is going to be our map. Sales by state, okay? This is going to be our map. To calculate our KPI involving the total sales value, we have to choose here, and we want it to be calculated by each year. So we have to put the years here in the row. So we took the order date and we placed the order date here in the rows. And now we have to place the sales here in the values. Okay, sum of sales. Well, we can remove the quarters and the months because we are not going to work with them. And we can leave here only the years. And let's format this as currency. And we can remove the decimal places. Right, so one last thing that we are going to do here in order to have our dynamic KPI in the dashboard is we are going to include here the function getPivotData. So let's go for this function getPivotData. We have to add the data field and then the pivot table and the field. So let's use this function. the data field is the variable sales, and the field that we are going to use here is this field. Okay, so we have same number as we have here, right? Okay, so let's now generate our first graph, which corresponds to a pivot table involving the sales by month. So let's take here the order date, and the sales. In this case, we want the sum of the sales values, and we want it only by months. Okay, here we have the sales by month. Let's again format this as currency and remove the cents. And let's also include now the graph. To this, let's use the menu Pivot Table Analyze. We can simply include the pivot chart. Here, we're going to use a line chart. Just a few adjustments. Let's remove this legend. Let's remove here the buttons on the chart. And then we will format it a bit more when we move it to our dashboard. And here we have our sales by month. Now let's calculate the volume of sales by month. And to do so, what we are going to do is we are going to take the order date, place it here in rows, and we are going to take the order ID and count the number of orders that I have in each month. This means that I can remove here the years and the quarters and maintain only the month. And as we did with the other graph, let's take here the menu Pivot Table Analyze and include the pivot chart. Let's use the line chart, which is standard when we want to do an analysis over time. Again, let's remove this legend. Let's hide clicking on the right button, and let's hide all these field buttons. And let's rename this chart here, volume of sales. So this means that we have the number of sales, and on the other graph we have the total sales value by month. And remember that this is the accumulated for all years. And if we look at this data set, we will observe that this data set covers from the year 2015 to the year 2018, right? So we've got a span of a few years here. I already have my first two graphs, and now let's plot in our storytelling our bar chart with the number of products sold by category and subcategory. We would better do the value of sales for each product category. Let's change it a little bit. So the volume of sales, sales by product category and subcategory. Okay, I think that's more interesting. So in this case, I'm going to place category and subcategory in the rows. Subcategory. And now the sales here as my value. Okay. And as we were talking about currency, let's do the same thing. And let's add here a chart. In this case, we are going to use column chart. Let's hide these field buttons and let's change the title. So sales by category and subcategory. Okay. And finally, let's go to our last chart, which is going to be a map. And in this case, we are going to draw a map of the counter of orders by state. It could be the sales value, but we chose here the volume of sales by state. Okay, so it's the volume of sales or the number of orders by state. Let's take state in place here, and let's take order ID in place here. We have the count, and there is one thing, we want to insert a map, but if we try to insert a map here, we'll see that the map doesn't accept us to work with a pivot table. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy all these values to here out of the pivot table. Okay, and now I'm going to insert the map. Okay, here I have my map. So I have the count of order, or the number of orders I have per state of the US. And let's change the title of this map, in this case orders by state, right? Okay, so I've got the main information that I want to add to my dashboard, and I am going to start here including this information in the dashboard. One of the things that we can do here to have a better feeling of a dashboard, we can suppress the grid lines, and now we are going to start including the information that we want in our storytelling. So our storytelling design includes one KPI, which is the total sales value, and 4 graphs, being 2 of them the line charts, then 1 bar chart and 1 map. And we are going to use 3 slicers to go over the years, the shipment mode, and the segment. And the way we are going to do that in our dashboard, we are going to put our KPI indicator here on the left, the slicers right below it, and then we are going to put the 4 charts in 2 rows. So it will be 2 line charts here, then the bar chart and the map. That's the way we plan to organize here our information. So the first thing that we are going to do is to include a frame for our KPI. Right, so let's put it here like this. And let's change a little bit. Let's choose a green for the field that's more similar to green. Yeah, okay, this one is better. It's more similar to this banner here. And now, in order to put our KPI here, one of the things that you'll have to do is you'll have to insert a text box. Okay, so let me create this text box here first. And now the information that we are going to put here is the information that we have in the KPI sheet exactly here. So KPI B11. So we'll come here to KPI B11. Now let's format a little bit this text box. Let's remove the line, let's remove the fill. And now let's give it a name. So let's text box here. Total sales. And let's align these shapes. Okay, so I've got this first part of my dashboard, it's ready. And now let's bring here all the graphs that we generated. So let's copy this graph here. Let's also copy this graph. Now the column chart. And then the choropleth map. Okay, so now one of the things that we want to do is to add some slicers. So I can choose one of the graphs and I can simply include a slicer. The first slicer that we're going to include is the slicer related to the years. So here I have the slicer. First slicer. Let's edit it a little bit. So for settings, I'm going to hide items with no data. and I'm going to remove the header. Okay. So, okay, let's do some formatting. Let's take this style that is more similar to this style and the colors that we are working with here. And now let's also do something also important, which is let's connect this slicer with all these graphs. We cannot connect it with the map because the map's not connected with the pivot table. Remember that we had to copy the data out of the pivot table, but then we can come here and connect this slicer with all the pivot tables, the volume of sales, sales by state, the KPI, and the products by category. This way, when I choose a year here, everything is going to change accordingly because everything is connected, right? Each one of these elements is connected with this slicer. Okay, so that's the slicer for the year. Let's include now the slicer for the shipment mode. So insert slicer shipment mode. Okay, it's here. Let's do the same procedure. In this case, I don't need to hide items with no data because I don't have it. Let's remove the header and move it a bit more to the bottom here because I'm going to include its name, the name of this slicer here. Let's take this style, and again, let's do all the connections with the KPI, products by category, the sales by month, and the volume of sales. Sales by state, it doesn't make any difference because, as I said, it doesn't affect the map. So if you want to see this working, now that's the shipment category. Okay, and finally, let's include the slicer for the segment. Segment. Here I have the year. Let's make it a bit bigger. And let's put it also green. And mode. Okay, and finally we have the segment. Okay, so now let's try and make this dashboard a little nicer. Let's reduce a little bit the size, the height of these two graphs. Let's move this to upper here, and we can also reduce a little bit their size so that everything is more aligned here. And we can also change the design here if we want. For example, we can change the colors. We can take palette that's more greenish. Now let's do the same thing with this new graph. If we want, we can also change the color of these borders. We can either remove the borders or we can change their colors. We can do many things here if we want, right? So here we can choose different styles. Border. In this case, I removed all the borders. If I want, for example, I can put a frame, for example, or I can put here certain frame like this, and then I put a white fill. Let's take a white fill. Let's remove the line. And we can, for example, add some shadow here. Now I can send it to the back. Complete more. And so it's much more elegant, right? Let's reduce this a little bit. And I can use this same frame for all the other graphs. Send it back. Send it to back. Send it to back. Okay, now I organize a little bit my chart so that it fits within the frames that I created. So here I have my dashboard with my sliders. All of them are connected. Yeah, everything is connected. You can see that everything now is dynamic. Let's check the segment. Well, okay, this slicer is not connected yet. So let's check the connections. Okay, and with this, we have our dashboard complete, and that's what I had to present for you today in terms of dashboard design with Excel. Thank you for your attention and see you in our next class.